Hi, I'm Sherry from Whole Circle Studio, and welcome to the Botanical Beauties Block of the Month and Quilt Sew Along. Today, I'm going to give you some tips as you begin to make your 8th Botanical Beauties block, an abstract lily of the valley. In addition to this video, please be sure to refer to the tips included in the pattern, as well as the links below to additional video tutorials. Let's get started. If you're using the same fabric for the flower as you are the stem, like in my block here, there are some sections on paper pieces that you can combine. An example of this would be paper piece B here in the wreath option, or paper piece M in the grid option. If I wanted to use the same fabric for the flower as the stem, this section would be here. I can use one piece of fabric to cover section 1 and section 2. And then I would just go ahead and skip ahead and sew on section 3, in this case with the background fabric. The same is true in paper piece U for the grid option and J for the wreath option in this block. As you're making other blocks, you may find other sections that you can do this in as well. There is a lot of great detail in this block with the rounded edges of the botanical. To achieve this, there is a good amount of piecing involved, including with small fabric pieces. You'll want to make sure that you budget a little bit of extra time for your block so that you enjoy the process and don't feel rushed or frustrated. If you need a reminder of tips for handling small pieces of fabric when paper piecing, be sure to check out the Tiny Foundation paper piecing video. The link can be found below. If you're using the same fabric in the background as you did in other blocks before this is the perfect time to grab those scraps from the blocks and use them up in this block. Because of the beautiful detail in this month's block, the stem area can get pretty bulky as you're joining your paper pieces, but it is manageable with a few tips and tricks. As I've mentioned in previous videos, I find that if I use a fairly lightweight paper and use the pressing techniques and tools that I highlighted in the block 4 video, that I can get my seams pretty flat and they're manageable and I can get them through my machine while I'm sewing and I'm quilting. I'll put a link to that video below so you can go back and review it as you're sewing and preparing this month's block. A couple of other tips. I can't stress enough how much it helps if you sew slowly. I know it is very tempting to put the pedal to the metal, but especially with bulky seams, go slow. Also, make sure that your needle is fairly fresh, a new needle that's sharp. That could really help while both sewing and quilting through these thicker areas. I've been using a Microtex needle lately for both sewing and then a fresh one for quilting, and I find that it really helps while I'm going through the bulky seams. Also, when I'm sewing pieces together that are bulky, I tend to put the bulkier of the pieces on top when I'm sewing them together through my machine. I find that I have more control and that it's easier to guide the pieces through my machine. Again, I also cannot stress enough how much easier it is to sew bulky seams by just sewing slowly. I can't wait to see your blocks come together. Thanks again for being here and for sewing along with us. I'll be back next month with more tips. In the meantime, if you have questions or comments or something you'd like me to show in a future video, please let me know in the comments below. Also, be sure to share your progress on Instagram using the Botanical Beauties hashtags found on the pattern so we can all check out what you're working on. You can also email me progress photos of what you're working on. My email address can be found in the pattern. See you next month and happy sewing!